Cool. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, you see a split view.
Yeah.
Are you on Windows? It looks like Windows.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm actually, to be honest, like I'm looking forward to the new M1 X Max coming. But for now, my original MacBook Pro, which is from early 2020, I think, is just horrendously slow. It's especially when I have a huge external display. So I was just tired of hearing the fan all the time. So I ordered a really high-end PC, and after just fiddling and changing the keyboard shortcuts to all work like a Mac and stuff like that, I'm actually quite satisfied with Windows now, especially with the WSL, where you can actually launch and spawn, like install Linux stuff, and yeah. It's
so basically, you're not using Windows, you're using Linux.
Yes, kind of. but all the programs, since I figured out all the programs I usually use are just Electron apps. So as long as the keyboard shortcuts and stuff stay practically the same, it's not much of a difference. So I'm satisfied with it. And it's good for Imba so that I can actually test things. The first few days I found like everything to be broken, and I really wondered how you Loris could ever run Imba at all. But
well, I'm not.
No. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, there are 7 people joined now.
And more coming.
Nice. Oh. Hey, everyone. Hey, folks. Cool.
Sindre, it seems like you really you've got like a rocket under you at the moment. You're really flying with the updates now.
Yeah, it's good to finally be done with the whole rewrite of the tooling. So now I have time to fiddle and fix minor stuff and plan ahead.
Just minor clarification. He's always sitting on a rocket. It's just a direction that time. It's not directed to him.
Exactly. The rocket is now visible for you guys.
We like this rocket.
Yeah, it's cool. So we could start with just what's new. I haven't really prepared. I should have prepared some examples actually showing it. Maybe I can do that for. I can try to run this fancy new run. Create example. Global. I'm not sure how much time I should spend on this, but a problem that none of you have probably run into at all is that if we have if you have a combination of SSR and client side stuff, and you have like the server side is rendering some templates, and you include stuff from different client-side entry points, it becomes a huge mess to actually include the correct CSS everywhere, especially when you refer to the same files on the server and the client, and each of them generates their own CSS style sheets, but there's a lot of duplication between them. There are tons of issues that we face with Scrimba. So I ended up creating a new feature essentially where the bundler actually takes the entry point. Like if you run a server or build a server, it takes the entry point there and traverses through all your included files, including the entry points for client-side JavaScript, and it merges those together, like all the styles from all of those, and merges those together into a single like global style sheet that should include every style you reference in your project. And to actually include them, if you have get blah 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 do regress, this is not how you do it, but this style, I'm not satisfied with it, but this is essentially how you reference the globally generated style sheet that includes all the styles, both from the server and from the client. And it's very useful. So in Scrimba, it made things a lot easier instead of having this awkward thing where we merged and included a bunch of different styles that had a lot of duplication. So I can just move quickly past this, but yes, this is now probably for almost all projects the preferred way to reference styles for your application. Let me see. The next thing is that we now support custom colors again. So you have all these default colors, as you all know, where you have like cyan, yeah, all of these colors essentially from the scale of 0 to 9. If you want to have custom colors, you can always do that by declaring some CSS variables, obviously, rand, blah, 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 and then refer to that somewhere. But it's very nice to have these types of styled colors that are compiled efficiently, and that can also where you can also set transparency and stuff on the colors, as you probably know about. The way to do that now is to have an Imba config JSON file in the root of your project, like where you run Imba serve or Imba build or whatever from, where you have a theme property, and that theme property has colors. And there are two features to this now. So one feature is that you can have an arbitrary name and an object. And if you define some values, some key value pairs on that object, you only have to define a few of them. Like I could define 0 to 9 here, but if you define either 2 or 3 or 4 or whatever, it will actually take those colors that you have defined and interpolate the remaining ones from 1 to 9, like the missing ones, where it interpolates the hue value. And it's, if I remember correctly, it will actually like do a guesswork interpolation where it looks at the saturation and lightness of the default blue color in the theme. So it actually works quite well. So I think I have a preview of it here. If I go to the custom colors, if I here run Imba serve index, and I go to localhost 3001, you'll see here that it has the mint colors are actually here. So I haven't defined mint 5 or mint 9, but since I have defined 2 or more colors here, it will interpolate them and create the values. So that's one thing. The other thing is that you can now also alias colors. So if we want to have a color named base, we can alias that to the existing like bundled, default color palette named cooler. So this example, that in this case, it doesn't make too much sense, but just as you can see here, I refer to base 5, and that's actually the same color as cooler 5. The main benefit of this is that we added the custom colors, like a bunch of new custom colors from Tailwind when Tailwind released 2.0. And then they added a bunch of additional shades of gray and stuff. And I think the whole idea there was not that you would want to refer to and use all these different shades of gray in a single project, but that you would want to like use a single gray, and then using configuration, you would map that single gray to one of the various shades. So if we go to Tailwind colors, I think the whole idea is that even, yeah. So like you see here in the theme, it sets actually, so gray, it sets gray to true gray. It says yellow to amber, which is a slight variation of the default yellow. So that's the same thing you can do here now in the theme. So now that we can do this, I think we should probably possibly change the names of the gray variations again, back from cooler, cool, warm, and warmer, back to the names from Tailwind, which is true gray, warm gray, something like that. I'm not sure. Colors. This isn't that good documentation. I thought Tailwind had the best documentation. Color. Colors, probably here. Didn't they have a ton of additional colors? Have they removed them already? Or? Yeah, this is the whole color sheet. So they have blue gray, cool gray, gray, true gray, and warm gray. So maybe we should change the names back to that and rather advise people to if they want to use the custom shades of gray, they can always use them, like referring to the name. But the ideal would be for them to set these color aliases in their theme. That way it's very easy to toggle, like in your theme, to toggle, I want to use the cool gray as the shades of gray in this project, this specific project.
You could start with like a one of them as a base color, couldn't you? And if that Imba config file comes by default,
yeah. So that's at least a possibility that we should consider. So yeah, the next thing, we'll probably go over time today, I think, but the next thing is syntax for global event handlers. So Andre Goldstein proposed something, at least posted an issue about that some time ago, and I've discussed it with Nathan as well many times. And that is that it's still in Imba pretty verbose and clumsy to define these global event handlers. Like you have a tag and you still want to listen to key down on the window or listen to the global scroll event, or what are the most common things, like listen to the global resize, listen to the global scrolling, something like that. And the main like clicking outside something. And the main problem with that was the main issue is that then you have to revert to using add event listener. And you also have to remember to track those event listeners and also remove them when your tag unmounts, if that's important in your use case. And you cannot use any event modifiers at all, because you have to revert to using the native add event listener. So we talked about a bunch of proposals. Like one of them was actually just adding like a special event handler where you do click outside or click global to actually like specify this one event should be listening on the global, like on the window instead. But for various reasons, I found that not ideal. Nathan didn't either. It seems kind of weird that as an element here, this actually is a global listener. So the idea I came up with today that I have implemented and actually pushed in Alpha 1.44 is that it's still experimental. We should possibly change the name of the tag, but the whole idea is to have, let me see if I can just run this now when we talk about it. Cermix, and then we can do 3001. So yeah. The whole idea now is to have a global tag, which is magical in the same way that self is. It should possibly be called root or something else. But the whole idea is that a global tag is kind of a slot or a portal into the global, like the root element, the window or the document body in some sense. So if I add a click log clicked global, I can remove all this other stuff. Def hold for now. Div, let me see, div inside app. So let me see now. So inside app here, I can remove the under app as well, just to make it less confusing. If I click anywhere in the window now, you see click global. So essentially, like when you render this app, the event listeners you have on the global tag proxy will bind to global. And the benefit of this is that you can now use all the event modifiers that you could always use. And this event handler will be removed, like the listener will be removed when the tag itself is removed. Like, so when app unmounts, all the event listeners on global will also unmount. And another cool thing with this is that you can actually also treat or look at the global as some sort of slot. So if you have children inside of here, I added from app, you will see that this div here is actually added to the root of the document, even if it's declared inside of the app tag. So when the app tag unmounts, the content inside the global slot will also unmount. So this use case is pretty weird, but let's say we have a menu. Like there are many ways to set a menu, but let's say we do it now, like div show menu, click show menu, yes. Let me see, show menu. So menu is not showing, but now when we click, the menu should be showing, like the variable should be updated to yes. So this is one way you could add, if it's important for some reason to have that menu overlaid over the whole document, or if when some tag is in some certain state, you want to include something in the global document, like outside of the app itself, you can just do it like this. So this is the menu. I hope this works. So yeah, so when you want to show the menu, this is now actually rendered outside of the tag app itself. There is a wrapper tag. I might remove that, but there is a wrapper tag. It should probably not be a div, but it's a style to always just display its content. So it shouldn't have any styling itself. And the cool thing about it is that it will actually inherit the classes and stuff from the slot in the app. So styling should work across them. So you can also here, like CSS div red 4. You'll all this was actually, so yeah, so there's a bug I discovered now. It applies to the outer div as well. Not sure why that happens. Yeah, it's when the CSS is inside of an if. Okay, so we'll fix that later.
Very
So,
cool
yeah.
for like, I think a lot of, sorry, that's not my use case, but I think a lot of people for like modals and things,
yeah,
like to use them sort of like that, right? I'm not always, is that a Z index thing? I don't know, or like,
yeah, it
just
will
like to have a portal.
It will especially be a nice way to, if you have a lot of menus and context menus and things like that, it's a nice way to keep all of that declarative as well. Because the way I've usually done context menus and stuff now is that you have methods where you actually create these menu elements, run Imba mount, and let them take care of the logic of unmounting and routing events and stuff. But this is actually a very viable way to do that. And that way you will get the fully declarative thing. Like, so let's say we have, I can now add the old examples, which were weirder. But there's a bunch of things that are bound to various elements inside and outside the tag. We bind this input to the name. Let's say inside of global in show menu, we have global option name. So whenever we're showing the menu, this is rendered completely at the top level of the document here. If I write something inside of the tag, it will still, because it's declaratively rendered as part of the tag, it will actually update the state and text and properties and everything of the menu or whatever that is now rendered in the root of the document. And yeah, so this, again, this works very well as you can see here, if show menu is true, then we will render this global portal here. And then we will have this click event that logs clicked while showing menu. So you will see here that clicked while showing menu is showing. If I disable this, then that event listener has disappeared. And to support Andre's use case, I also then added a outside event listener. For now, that may be weird. It only works on the global portal. But this works the way that any event defined on the global with an .outside event listener, event modifier, will only trigger if the event happened outside of the parent of this. So in this case, it will only happen. So you can see clicked outside app. I'm gonna clean up to remove some of the messages here. So now we have a global click outside app. So you can see here, it triggers when we click outside app. If we click inside, it does not trigger.
Amazing.
But also, if we added another one, like span, click outside inner div. So now we also have a global event listener that triggers now clicked outside inner div because we did. But when we click inside of here, you will see that it does not trigger. And that's because, yeah, this event originated from inside of the parent of the portal. So yeah, it's probably a lot to take in now. And since it's very experimental, the actual implementation and some details may change in the next few weeks, but I think it's a pretty decent concept. So now the challenge is, what should this be called? Should it be called global or root? What name could we give it that actually makes it very clear that this is a magical special type of tag?
Quick question, does this only work with the root element? I mean, is this only working with global, or would you envisage reaching out to other tags as well with the same style?
So theoretically, you could be able to reach out to other things as well, but that gets more complicated very quickly. So you would need some sort of syntax for declaring that. I guess you could. Yeah, now it's hard coded to only work with the document body, but clearly it could work with something else. You could maybe even do it like if you have a portal or whatever targets some element.
It's just for you to consider when you're looking for a name, if you want to extend it eventually to also include some other cases.
Yeah. So I think it was Andre who called it that now at the beginning of this discussion, but I think portal is, to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think portal is could be a pretty nice description of what's happening, because it's not or a proxy, but proxy is used for so many other things. So it is essentially a portal, like everything, event listeners inside of this and content inside of this is kind of moved.
You don't like global?
Yeah.
You don't like it? You don't like global? I sort of
I do
know,
like
maybe...
it. I think it's fine, and it's very, yeah, I think global is fine. I just want to run it by you if anyone has any inputs about that. So nothing. Yeah.
Either way, it's awesome. Thank you. Yeah,
no problem. It's I'm looking forward to using it myself. I have so many places where I do all these clunky add event listener things on window and document. So
wouldn't global essentially be the opposite of self?
If global is the opposite of self?
Yeah, technically, wouldn't that be for anything that's not self?
Yeah. Do you I'm not sure if I get what you mean, but yes, like it's.
I was just thinking that word could just be not self.
Yeah.
Other. Another aspect, this is very tightly tied with the DOM, right? I mean, we would not be able to reuse the same concept for a situation outside of the browser.
Now that's one challenge that right now it wouldn't work in SSR stuff, but that's mostly because mount and unmount is just not really a concept in the server-side rendering. I could get it to work. It wouldn't be too problematic, but for now, I think it will only work in browser, yeah.
Because yeah, you're calling this outside, which well makes a clear reference to these rectangles and clicking outside of a rectangle. But if instead you would go for something like exclusive or inclusive as a way, okay, this click handler is exclusive, like not including the originating tag.
Yeah. Yeah, you're talking about just renaming outside to something that doesn't sound so visual, I think.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
I'm definitely open for other names for that. It would kind of have to be uncontained or just a negative. Yeah, we can.
I threw a few names in the chat.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out. I can keep. Oh, there were many chat messages there. Yeah. Peter, you asked, can we use import to add Google Web Fonts to our CSS in Imba? The import attribute doesn't really work now, but that's a good question. So maybe you could file an issue about that. So either we need to support import, that we probably should anyways. That should compile just to a straight up CSS import. But we should also be able to actually import, like do import this blah, 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 Google font, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, that'd be really nice.
Yeah, and that
I
should
like
be
that
possible. Better. Yeah, then we should do it that way. We should file an issue about that, track it for
Okay.
beta or version 2. But that's definitely something that should be rather trivial to add with Bundler. I just haven't added a generic resolver that actually resolves and downloads the HTTP and HTTPS references. But yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So yeah, we should do that.
Since you're mentioning the resolver and ESBuild, are you keeping updated with the newer versions of ESBuild?
Yeah, that's actually a challenge. So I'm still reading the ESBuild changelog frenetically. It's like if I type in GitHub, you'll see that the proposed go-to URL is actually Avenue ESBuild. I just love I love everything about that product. Yeah. So and he has had so many good improvements and impressive things in the changelog.
Yeah, in version 12, he has already corrected the CSS chunked import and priorities, and I know that you were really struggling with that, and yeah, you created your own fix. So I was just wondering if you are adapting or you just stay with a certain version and you leave it there.
Yeah, so for now we're staying, but definitely we should move to the new versions. I think we might need to opt out of the whole hashing algorithm stuff that he's done now, which I'm sure is probably much better than the way we've done it. But the reason we have to just work around that for now is that ESBuild doesn't like natively support something like importing references to other ESBuild bundles. So like in Imba, you can do import blah blah or const client equals import web src client, whatever. So this actually compiles to an import statement that will import a wrapper for an asset that will then again be bundled in ESBuild, and then it takes all these hashed references. And especially for the server, instead of actually, if something updates on, if this is a server file and something updates in the client, nothing in the server file, like it will rerun all the bundling, but the server file itself will stay the same because it will only refer to an external manifest to fetch the actual updated client bundle, because then it's possible to reload the client and the styles and stuff without actually restarting the server at all.
Wow.
So there are so many things like that that isn't natively part of ESBuild. But yes, I think I should try relatively soon to upgrade to 0.12, but at the same time, still skip all the amazing hashing things he's done, and stay with the original.
Cool.
But yeah, and the same goes for CSS, because he's actually implemented a really complex but correct way to reorder CSS chunks the way CSS is meant to be imported. But in our case, we actually do not want to. So if you have a client that includes a reset CSS at the top, like importing a reset something, reset CSS, and you also include that in the server somewhere, like you have a client where you have import reset, and you have the server Imba where you import reset, blah, blah, import the client. The combined CSS that we want to generate, we really don't want the reset to be kind of imported again in the new order. So when we traverse through all the imports in the bundle, when we hit the client here and we get into the client and we see that it refers to reset CSS, we don't want to bump that reset CSS import down to the position of the client. We only want to merge them like gradually, and that's not what ESBuild does, because ESBuild does it the correct way, like how you would actually expect it to work in if you use CSS imports. But yeah.
Okay, yeah, no, perfect. Indeed,
Yeah.
it was just that once we hit beta, then there's less flexibility to change these radical changes.
Yeah, and we should absolutely get up to speed with ESBuild, because it's probably only going to get more amazing as it has done forever, every day, forever. So if any of it was you, Loris, who tipped me off about ESBuild from the get-go and actually implemented the first version of ESBuild support in Imba. If anyone is just interested in following a really high quality open source product that changes all the time with an amazingly detailed changelog, I would really advise you to actually check out EvanU/ESBuild and just follow it, because it's so fun.
You will lose supporters of Imba and go with supporters.
Yeah, that's true. So so don't do that then. But yeah. Okay, we're already kind of over time, but I guess we should just continue. There are some questions. I think we should probably get more structured in the future, where we always tag actual issues on the repository with meeting, and then discuss all those issues on the next meeting. I haven't really done that now, so I just added a bunch of items that we could discuss. The first one is that I've struggled with now that I've worked on the Imba tooling for some time, that is basically using TypeScript, type inference, and TypeScript language service to provide completions and diagnostics. And as you all know, as many of you know, Imba does support dashed identifiers. So you can both do def hello world, and you can do it even for variables like one item. The challenge there is that they compile to the camel case versions. So this actually compiles to hello world. The reason I initially wanted to support it is because I felt that it looks kind of natural, and it's what you use in CSS and HTML. And I also wanted to support it because coming from Imba, I had a real inclination to use snake case, but everything in JavaScript is using camel case. So I just couldn't really decide between the two. So when I added the dashed identifiers, at least for a long time back in the day, I then felt that, okay, so this is a decent compromise because it will always compile to the JavaScript we all know, but it looks more like the Ruby-ish way of doing it. But there are some challenges, like you can easily run into problems then when you expect this to actually be one minus item. There are confusing issues with them, and also completions, as you can see now. That's kind of sloppy on my part, but it actually completes to the camel case version, and then the variables are not mapped, so you don't get semantic highlighting. There are some confusing aspects that I either need to spend a lot of time fixing in the tooling, or we should have a serious discussion about actually deprecating that functionality in Imba. And it's very easy for us to write a transformer that helps you keep the code up to date and actually change all the dashed identifiers to camel case or something else. But
looks nice though. Looks really nice. I agree. From like Ruby background and stuff, it's just so much more readable than camel case. But everything in JavaScript is.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Do anyone else have any input on that? Like, do you use the dashed identifiers at all, or?
Yeah, I use them everywhere. I like kebab case.
Yeah, kebab case. That's actually the name for it. Yeah.
Imba's like the whole point of Imba is to make things friendly and fun, and it probably goes completely against the whole JavaScript world in every way. Imba, makes things easier. There's a lot of magic, and so it feels like if any framework's going to do it, I think it should be Imba.
So then it sounds like, at least from the input of you two, it sounds like I should rather spend at least some time. It's not much to fix the tiniest issues, like especially variable completions, but I should rather spend some time fixing the tooling rather than suddenly deprecating the whole support for that, I guess. But because I do agree, it looks nice, and
if you can do it, I mean, so you've got so much stuff to do, but I mean, that's just purely aesthetics. For me, I don't know if other more powerful users have, more important reasons, but aesthetically, it looks really nice, and it sort of seems to fit with everything else looking nice with Imba.
Yeah, and I think as well, like the whole argument between camel case and snake case has been going on for ages, and all the languages have their different conventions and stuff. But if you look at the real world, like how do you actually separate two combined words in the real world? Yeah, that's with a dash. You never write an underscore when you write regular English. So yeah.
Is the main reason that I guess that people go that way is because of subtraction? Is that the
maybe
operations?
I'm not sure. So people are very used to dashes in CSS and also in HTML properties. So
that is actually a very interesting point that surfaced also in Discord. This negative indexes only with numbers or also with variables. That is important. The other important thing was also these 2 dots or 3 dots in a range. These are things that just feel awkward, at least to me, and not yet satisfied with the different proposals.
Yeah. This is a late meeting. Meeting. Yeah, so this is the discussion there. Yeah, that's another thing we could discuss now, like quickly. The proposal of, I really agree. I'm not sure if you read the discussion on Discord, but I agree that it is the fact that we cannot have negative indexes to refer to negative to like the end of an array is pretty annoying. And I find myself way too often writing something like that, like split text and then split text dot length -1. To me, it just doesn't make sense. But since we can't really reinvent native JavaScript, then we do want to make Imba perform really well in every case. I don't think it's a viable option to actually override native array access during compilation and then always check if it's a negative access or not and do magic like that, because there will be a performance penalty. and that is a type of action you might do relatively often. So it's very easy to support literal numbers, literal minus numbers, but do you folks think it's too weird that it only works for literal numbers, or?
Well, I'm already very glad that at least it works with literal numbers.
Yeah, but it doesn't now, but yeah.
Yeah, well, it would. And using the same with variables, well, of course, speed is the main priority here. So if it's technically not possible, well, so be it.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if there is a compilation trick, even when you use variables in a negative context.
Yeah, we could, but again, we will need to check a lot. But we could, at least instead of wrapping it in some sort of helper function, we could inline it and make it relatively fast. But it will still require some comparisons and stuff everywhere.
So basically, people that have to focus on speed, they would use an alternative way of doing things.
Yeah, but then you could also say that, well, everyone who does not want to focus on speed, just do extend class array somewhere and just define at index and do like if index 1 blah blah blah.
Yes, that's what I would be doing.
Yeah,
that's the reason why I would love to have it already included in the language.
Yeah, exactly. So this would be one way to not solve it, but kind of, yeah.
Do you ever get tempted to do that, to sort of add lots of sort of Ruby features to the language, or
yeah,
are you quite disciplined and you're just going to keep JavaScript methods and that's it? Or?
No, all the time, especially like in big projects like Scrimba. We do have a utils file where we have extended both array and string and other things with convenience methods, because that's really one of the things I love a lot about Ruby. It's the very well thought out standard library, and I think it's really lacking in JavaScript in many cases.
Well, that is also what you read in the remarks in the comments to your article on Dev2. People are complaining, why are you deviating from the JavaScript syntax? But once that gets accepted, they would just realize that this way you can create a language that is so much more powerful and where you're no longer constrained to the old legacy stuff that has been creeping along with JavaScript for so many years.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that all of these comments, I'm not really even responding that much to them, because I think it's just, yeah, it's just weird to think that it's a valid argument, and then without also thinking about that React and almost all of the other technologies has been subject to the same criticism at some point in time. It's just about popularity. Like once something becomes actually used and adopted, then it's no longer strange and weird and deviating. But JSX from the get-go it's definitely deviating from original native regular JavaScript. So
Imba's like again I feel like maybe this is saying that someone who's used quite a few frameworks, that Imba is, if you're a real, I'm not trying to, this isn't a criticism in any way, but if you're a real purist, then maybe Imba's not where you're at. You know, if you're really, your main focus is absolutely everything in just JavaScript, no magic, no improvements to the language, then Imba might not be your first choice, you know, anyway. You're probably going to be yes, maybe not the market, I don't know.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are many cases still where Imba wouldn't be the preferred language. I definitely see the use of TypeScript or even more strongly typed variations, especially if you have large teams with large code bases. So Imba is definitely still much better for very small teams that can move very quickly and accept some mess and things like that. It's much easier to shoot yourself in the foot with Imba than many of the alternatives. But I think a lot of that comes down to just maturity, and that it hasn't been used by a lot of people yet. So there are still a lot of bugs floating around, in addition to just documentation non-existent documentation for parts of the language and just poor documentation for much of the other things.
So what you're saying right now is part of the marketing efforts actually in the list of
Yeah,
topics.
yeah, definitely. So we can jump to that. State of tooling is just, we launched new tooling. There are some bugs. I'm trying to fix them as I experience them, and I will probably push an update every 2-3 days or something, just fixing tiny highlighting issues and completion issues. One challenge I really see now is that the automated tests are really falling behind. I haven't written a new test in months for Imba, even though I've added features and fixed bugs and all of that. I haven't been prioritizing that at all. And
but just a silly question here. The replace all regression case.
Yeah,
that would have been a 2-liner. I mean, just a test that checks if replace all is being used or not used. That would just have helped to avoid that kind of node 14 or whatever it was bug.
Yeah, but the problem there, this is a perfect example to frame the discussion around, because the problem there is that I would never have thought about adding a test to test for replace all, because if I had remembered that that was even an issue, I just wouldn't have used replace all, because I wouldn't want to depend on a really new version of Node for something like that. But it should definitely have been picked up by more integration-like tests. Like, there are no tests right now that really do bundling at all. Like, we should have a bunch of tests with example directories with a bunch of different examples that actually use the bundler and tries to access the server that we have just started serving, looking for, are these elements being returned? We should have some automated tests like that, whereas now we have essentially none, because all the whole testing, all the tests are essentially made before we move to the ES build stuff. So testing is a really bad, like a really poor part of the Imba code base now that should be improved and focused.
I have added a comment there on the state of automated tests. I just wanted to link that also with the documentation efforts. If we had more one-liner tests, it would make it easier for the guys motivated to complete the documentation to see what is the true way of implementing certain features, or to do how to do certain things. You are showing so many tricks here in these videos, in these meetings, but somehow, we have to put them into documentation, and it would really help if we could just, find back those one-liners or three-liners. Also as tests, for example, just to see, okay, should we use parentheses? Should we not use parentheses? Should we split the line or write it all in the same line? It wouldn't be nice to see, what are your best practices, the way how you would do it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just, it comes down to time and priority, and I definitely agree. It's a very important part of the upcoming launch and just the future of Imba is to add a bunch more, ton of more examples, and also just write down the conventions that I use. And I see it all the time, just looking at some code in the chat. I see, I don't remember who, but I saw some code that was pasted that everywhere where they used callbacks, they would do like set, let me see, if you have an array, they would do 1, 2, 3, for each, and then no, like this, do item blah blah, something like this. So they would always use the placeholder reference for callbacks, and that's okay. But the whole point of the placeholder reference that should probably document clearly is that it should only be needed when the callback argument is not the last argument of the function, because this could be written just as for each do item. So things like that I see all the time, and it's it will probably take some time before Imba gets to a point where most of the code written in Imba follows these conventions. And
could those things be warnings in the tooling, like in the VS code?
They could, but I think it's more work than, there are so many other more important things in the tooling right now that I don't find that a priority right now. But it should be a priority just to at least map out the basic conventions I use, and then make people more aware of that. By the way, one cool thing that I didn't talk about the last time, it's really cool in the new tooling that it actually has suggestion diagnostics from the TypeScript as well. So you will see that it dims methods and variables that are not used. That's especially for me who write code in this really chaotic way, where I just write what I think about and then leave a lot of mess behind. It's so nice to be able to go through a code base like Imba now and see that, oh, there are tons of variables here that aren't really referenced anywhere, and even imports that aren't referenced. And it's a really good way to clean up things. So there's so many cool things with the new tooling. Moving on to marketing efforts. I wrote, as you also, I just added a small article to Dev2 about the upcoming beta. And I think even that small article got more than enough of attention, and we have a bunch of new users in the chat I see, and probably 20, 30, 40 new stars. So already it looks like it pays off, like small articles like that. If you from every article get 1 or 2 people who actually try out Imba, and 50% of them might fall in love with it and start using it, I think that is the way we will be able to bring the language to a broader public. So even if we're not in beta at the moment, and even if there are things remaining, I think we should start thinking about increasing those efforts. So maybe things like posting about Imba on Hacker News. Maybe I should do, write some articles. I'm very open to suggestions, and also open to help from people who like Imba. If you want to write some tiny Dev2 article or whatever.
How do you feel about moving to beta? Wouldn't that inspire a little bit more trust for newcomers if they would see this not in alpha but actually in beta?
Yeah, I think the main argument for moving to beta is that it's very natural to combine with the marketing push, like actually write a blog post about Imba in beta 1, etc. The downside of moving to beta is that it seems really amateurish to have beta 1 released and then beta 2 released 2 hours later, removing the use of replace all in the library. So until we have better testing, I'm just afraid of, I really like being able to push out, like today, I actually pushed out the global portal tag idea just really quickly as an alpha, just so other people than me can start trying it out. And I don't really, I'm sure, could we have a type of beta release where we also have much more frequent updates in a different
branch
NPM, or a different NPM tag, like at pre and at latest. I'm not sure how the SEM version works with all of that, but I just
because it's easy to understand for the people who are inside Imba to know, okay, how easy it is to reach out to you to ask for new features or to correct some bugs, etc. And that is really very flexible and very smooth and very fast as well. But for people that come from the outside, I mean, having their fingers burned with other projects, they might be a little bit reluctant or hesitant if they see that the software is alpha, and where they wonder, does it have a future? Will development start stalling in 3 or 4 weeks? Would it be worth my effort to start studying basically a new dialect of a language? All these questions are justified, and for people outside of the Imba environment, that is what they would be asking. So I'm just trying to address that.
Yeah, so I am open to moving to beta soon. Like I don't think there are any showstoppers for doing that now. There have certainly been less mature beta releases of software in many places. It is relatively stable. There probably will be more. So we're not following the whole semware philosophy anyways. Like when we move to beta, it's not like we won't add any new features or things like that. But I am open to moving to beta soon. We could do it next week. We could. Right now, I'm working on making Imba work really well on Scrimba, so it will be easier to create screencasts and do examples and snippets and stuff there. So that will be an important thing before we launch more broadly, I think, because then we can actually, then I can do more videos showing these things.
Okay, then let's do that as
But yeah.
as a precondition. Let's
Yeah.
first have at least, I mean, 10 small little short scrims before
Yep.
moving to beta, so that we can already feature that, and the scrims are very interactive, so that is a huge selling point as well.
Yeah, I agree, and that will make it possible as well to start the efforts of creating a short but high quality course on Imba, like an introduction to Imba, and that's going to be done. And
make
I'm
it
not
free. Ideally, make it free.
yeah, definitely. It will obviously be free. So and I'm not the one who will do that, because if it was me, then it will never get out. But yeah, I think Nathan, like Trafnar, is interested in doing that, and I think he will do a fantastic job. Like, he's already posting really good videos on Imba and other things on YouTube. So
Excellent.
yeah, roadmap beta. I should have spent at least 10 more minutes thinking about the roadmap. I will try in the coming days to add some issues and actually tag them on the milestone beta. Special, because I have some ideas. I even have a document with a ton of language ideas and missing features, and I will look through that and consider like which of these are actually important for a final 2.0 release or a beta release, and then try to actually organize the issues in the repository so that we can use the milestone as a sort of roadmap, or we could create
kind of a countdown.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. We do have an animal mascot, don't we, Peter? So it's actually the really cool. That should be featured on the website. Why isn't it? It's so cool. Yeah, I thought we had it here, but it's the mascot Eric created, which is just fantastic. Eric, do you have a link to that now, or? I was just.
It might be on the design repo.
Yeah, I think it's here as well, isn't it?
My desktop right now. I'm just watching on my phone.
Okay. Brand. Yeah, I need to leave very soon now. Mascot. Here it is. Oh, only the legs. Okay, so these are the legs of the mascot.
Great.
You know. And it's only the profile image. We should probably have a more. Yeah, maybe you could do that, Eric. Like, add a more. Here, I think you can see the full mascot. It's sort of this bird.
I sent a link to an animated version of the mascot.
Yeah.
Now the chat here.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the Zoom chat. I think it's the right link. Check out the Zoom chat.
Yeah, I'm seeing it now. Yeah, there. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Ooh. Nice. We should definitely get that on the website. It's not a high priority, but it would be really cool to have it like in the lower corner or upper, like an annoying helper, like in a Word. Yeah.
So let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we can continue just mentioning hygienic macros the next time. Maybe you can do some more. I'm still really not into that yet. I sadly have to go pick up my son now.
Oh, what version of Node should we be using?
It should be safe. Everything after 12.6 or something, I think. But I would recommend using 14 or 15. Yesterday you had to be using 15, but that was due to a bug, not intentionally. It might even be wrong. Like, it says that it requires Node above 13.10. That might be wrong now, but I think that's the baseline. We should give better warnings when people are on older Node versions. But yeah, now I actually have to leave. So thank you all for meeting.
Thank you.
See you next time.
Bye. Excellent explanation. Bye bye.